People in East Harlem say bottle collectors are turning the neighborhood into an eyesore and a health hazard.
Residents believe the people coming to them with collections are mostly asylum seekers staying at the Randall's Island tent shelter.
It's difficult.
So every asylum seeker here came to New York to get a job and start a better life, but there's a problem. Because although the city's offered housing and shelter to 200,000 people, the jobs everyone came here expecting to get just aren't materializing. Which means that the tens of thousands of people the city's taking care of in its shelters, they're not living an American dream. No, instead they're living an American nightmare.
Down in the subway, young migrant mothers with their little ones strapped to their backs, some too afraid to speak with us. They are down here selling food, trying to make a living in a new country.
The migrants and asylum seekers want to be independent, they want to have agency, they want to work.
Bags of bottles and cans piled high on 1st Avenue and 102nd Street.
Morning, noon, and night. They'll sleep right here with bottles because they want to be the first online.
The challenge for us now is there's so many jobs open that it actually has potential to cripple our economy if we don't find more people to take these jobs.
Here we see the situation rather hard and we can't get a job. He stands for hours along with dozens of migrant day laborers waiting for a car to pick them up and take them to a job site.
The New York State Department of Labor has identified more than 45,000 jobs open to migrants and asylum seekers as part of a statewide initiative led by Governor Kathy Hochul.
You can see the desperation. Once a car pulls up, they all run towards it, hoping today will be the day they will be chosen.
So only 2,000 unemployed asylum seekers have been connected with jobs since this crisis began. But what nobody's talking about is that this challenges the entire idea that New York is a city full of opportunity for immigrants. An idea which has governed all the city's responses to this crisis since the very first bus from the border arrived right here at the Port Authority, with many an elected official championing the crisis as a massive benefit for New York as it would bring our city the thousands of workers it lost during 2020. Yet even though New York claims it has 45,000 job openings for asylum seekers with temporary protected status or work authorization, for some reason those jobs remain unfilled even though we've got 65,000 people living in the shelter system, revealing that something here is not quite right. Because we hear there are jobs, yet nobody has one, making people utterly dependent upon the government for their very survival with no signs of that ever changing, which could mean the asylum crisis has no endpoint. But that brings us to the real reason why this is a massive problem for New York City, because all of this shelter has been based on the idea that people only need it on a temporary basis because we've got so many jobs, we need so many workers that folks were gonna come here and then boom, get plugged right into the economy, but that hasn't been happening. As is painfully obvious from the thousands of people now being evicted from the city's shelters, waiting in long lines to try and get a temporary extension. And although a system that makes people homeless and jobless is obviously broken, some say that the people that are part of this system were duped into believing there were jobs and opportunity for them that never existed, making the entire system that brought them here one big lie. So on the other side of these orange cones is the entrance to one of the city's shelters for single men. It's called the Candler Building, and it is so full that people are evicted on a rolling 30-day basis. Now ask yourself a question. Why do people need to be evicted from shelters if we've got so many jobs in the city that people can just go get one and get on their own 2 feet? This is America after all, unless those jobs are actually a myth.
Have faith in God and don't give up. Those are the words of Gustavo Tanqueño of Ecuador, who arrived 4 months ago. Every morning since, he stands for hours, along with dozens of migrant day laborers waiting for a car to pick them up and take them to a job site.
This is so sad to see, and it doesn't really matter what your views on the asylum crisis are. All of these people were moved into shelters believing, or at least allowed to believe, that their best days were ahead of them and that they were all going to have jobs and have brand new lives. But obviously that has not been the case, and no one talked them out of it. And now you have massive numbers of people who live in the shelter system waiting on the street for jobs that just don't exist. But the guy being interviewed, he says he works 2 days a week and he makes a couple $100s every time he works. The other 5 days, he's waiting around trying to get work which never shows up. And there are thousands of people in his exact same situation, not just here at the Candler building, but in shelters all over the city right now. But he mentions something very important. He says that you come here to learn a trade. And if you learn a trade, now you've got a skill. And here's the thing, these shelters, these cost hundreds of millions of dollars to operate, and there's no investment from the city, even though there's all that money, to help people learn trades and actually plug themselves into our economy, which means there might be a mismatch between the skills people have when they get here and the skills they actually need to succeed, and nothing's being done about that. I'm not saying that we should necessarily go and do that, but it just seems odd that the people who are championing the asylum crisis as a way to plug holes in New York City's economy don't have anything to say to the people who are here and want a job and can't get one.
You can see the desperation. Once a car pulls up, they all run towards it, hoping today will be the day they will be chosen. He tells us this isn't the American dream he pictured. I thought it wasn't like that. If I knew this, I would have stayed in my own country. In my country.
So here we have an individual who says that if he had known what life in this country was actually going to be like, he never would have came. And as you go by any of the shelters in town and you see all of the folks that are hanging out outside with nothing to do, you've got to wonder how many of them feel the exact same way and were deceived into believing in a process that's not actually here to help them. Well, luckily, the New York Post looked into this, and what they found was that over the last 2 years, the city has approached a grand total of 9,000 people about work opportunities in New York City, and the majority of the 5,500 people who responded and asked for job assistance were unable to secure employment, even with the help of the city. Now, this might make it seem like asylum seekers don't want jobs, but that idea directly conflicts with all of the people who are out on the streets looking for work and can't seem to find any. So why do we have such a mismatch?
People in East Harlem say bottle collectors are turning the neighborhood into an eyesore and a health hazard.
They say what's left behind is broken glass, bottle caps, and litter. We made multiple attempts to reach the owners of the truck companies, but residents believe the people coming to them with collections are mostly asylum seekers staying at the Randall's Island tent shelter.
It's difficult. I mean, they go through this back.
So 45,000 available jobs, that's what the state says, are available to people who are in the shelter system, yet all people in the shelter system are able to do is collect bottles. Now, the shelter in question in this story is the Randall's Island facility, which is directly across a footbridge that leads right over to East Harlem. And bottle collection is one of the few ways that you can employ yourself and make some money. But the problem is you're not exactly going to make a ton of money and live on your own in a fancy New York City apartment if that's what you do for a living. Yet we're being led to believe that people aren't making their best effort to go out and get the jobs that the city is just trying to give away. We're being told that people either don't want to work or would prefer to do something like bottle collection instead. That just doesn't make any sense. But the issue of people not being able to find good jobs doesn't just exist in Queens or in Manhattan. No, in fact, it also exists right in here, beneath our feet.
Maria and her 2 daughters are currently living in one of the city's migrant shelters. About 3 months ago, she decided to start buying fruit and selling it. On a good day, she says she can walk away with $100.
So you've really got to feel bad for the mom who has small children. The city isn't providing free childcare. They say there are resources available, but childcare is very hard to get. And if she were to take a traditional position, she would probably have to pay for childcare, which would erode all of the income from that position, which is why she and many others are selling food in the subway system right now. And you see this all around the city, people choosing to be entrepreneurs because there is just no other choice, selling things like fruit, selling things like water out of coolers near construction sites. It's definitely illegal, however, as you can't sell food in the city without a license. But that's the problem. Everybody who's in the shelter system is expected to take steps to live on their own 2 feet. And how are you going to be able to do that if you're just making a couple $100s a day? How long is it going to take? Critics say that the reality of people's inability to find work means the asylum crisis may last for a lot longer than anyone's expecting.
She arrived over a year ago from Ecuador, spent 2 months looking for work and nothing.
Un día normal como hoy, ¿cuánto saca? ¿Cuánto dinero puede?
Bueno, verá, yo por decir, ayer yo vendí 380.
So this interview is interesting because the woman who they're speaking to, she's been in the country for over a year, and at first she says that she was unable to find work, so she had to start working on her own. But now she says that she's making on some days over $300, and she says that if she were to work a normal job, the pay would be a lot lower. And what this reveals is that the folks who are doing some of this entrepreneurial work, maybe the reason they're not taking these jobs that the state says are available is because those jobs pay less than jobs they can do on their own, running their own business. But the problem is opportunities like that are not the pathway to success that we have been told is the reason the asylum crisis is such a benefit for New York City. And the city's critics say it's ridiculous to tell people they have to move out of the city's shelters after just 30 days when they can't find a job and live on their own 2 feet and were brought to the shelter for that very purpose. Yet while all this is going on, our leaders still tell us that there's a job out there for every single person who wants one. So here we are by a bunch of little restaurants and cafes, places where the job site, Indeed, says there are thousands of available positions, and that's in addition to the thousands of available positions at the state level. Yet for some reason, we've got thousands of people in shelters who want jobs and say they cannot find them.
On today's menu in this New York City kitchen, a chance at a better life. 38-year-old Escarly fled Venezuela with her daughters, where she says the government seized the restaurant she owned.
El gobierno nos quitó todo, nos quitó los sueños y decidí viajar para acá a buscar mejor oportunidades.
Okay, so here we have someone from Venezuela who is enrolled in a non-profit's training academy, but there's a problem because the woman whose story is being told, she's from a country that has a TPS designation. Temporary protected status means that people from countries like Venezuela can start working in as little as 30 days. They don't have to wait 180 days after applying for asylum to get authorization. On top of that, she has prior experience running a restaurant in Venezuela, yet for some reason, she's not working right now. And one of the thousands of available jobs we're told are available. No, instead, she's getting training so that she can then be employed somewhere. Which reveals something else about this whole idea of people coming here and getting jobs immediately, which is that even if people have past experience working in an industry that's related to an available job opening, the skills they have still may not transfer.
The challenge for us now is there's so many jobs open that it actually has potential to cripple our economy if we don't find more people to take these jobs. It is that dire.
The New York State Department of Labor has identified more than 45,000 jobs open to migrants and asylum seekers.
45,000 available jobs. But the big question is, what types of jobs are these? Are they good jobs? Are they bad jobs? Why is no one taking them? Here's one. Human Resources Assistant pays $60,000 a year. Department of Corrections. Process employment verifications, check email, use Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, schedule and conduct interviews, and it requires a degree from an accredited university. Well, I guess we have to write that one off. Here we go. Community Assistant pays $37,000 to $40,000 a year. No formal education requirements. The only requirement is that you can speak English and understand English. You'll be emptying trash, loading trucks, distributing supplies, washing floors, installing wallpaper, changing light bulbs, and you don't have to be able to use a computer other than applying for the job online, which you could probably find somebody to help you with. So why is this job available when we have tens of thousands of people looking for work? You're telling me that there's not one person who speaks enough English for the state to hire them and has work authorization in one of those facilities? On top of that, this job is inside the actual shelter system, yet we have people leaving the shelter system to come out here on the street and look for jobs that are not available. That makes me wonder, is this job actually available? Is the state being very strict with their hiring requirements, or is there something else at play here we aren't seeing? Here's another one, custodial assistant, no experience required. Number of positions available, 12. That's a lot. How come these aren't filled? Literally every single person in the shelter system is there because they were told that there were all of these jobs available, yet none of the people that want to do those things are able to get hired. And the city's own jobs, entry-level jobs, are sitting unfilled with lots of available positions. Either these are jobs that nobody wants, or for some reason, no one is actively being sought out to fill these positions, even though they are listed as available on a government website. Or maybe the jobs just pay so little, nobody wants them, but really? When we're collecting bottles instead? That just, I don't know. But what about this idea of training people to up their skill level so that they can plug into the economy here?
We've had 800 applications to date for somewhere between 60 and 75 spots.
Maria and Escarly thrilled to be enrolled.
La niña más pequeña de 10 años me dice que ella se siente feliz por tener una chef como mamá.
Okay, so this particular training program, 800 people applied for it. to get just 60 available seats. It also seems to include English classes, which is something that could be holding some people back from a workforce where that is a requirement. And while that doesn't explain why the city has 12 unfilled janitorial positions that it says are open to everybody, it could explain why a lot of private companies haven't been able to hire as many new workers as they would like. Because getting an entry-level job with an actual employer and getting out of the gig economy here might be more challenging than any of us have imagined. Because the US economy might be very different than the economies people have come from. It's tightly integrated with computers and the internet. And even doing basic tasks like clocking in for work or managing your payroll online, things that we totally take for granted, might be very difficult for people who've never used a computer before. But even I find that hard to believe because a lot of the people who are here and don't have a job, they did something else that was at a much higher level than collecting bottles in the country that they came from. Yet jobs that require the skills they might have, for some reason, there's no way to line these folks up. Is it total incompatibility? Is that what we're looking at here? Or is the reality that the thousands of jobs we're told exist actually don't? Because if you have people that have experience renovating apartments somewhere else or doing any type of work, if they've got a skill, how are they not able to find work on a regular basis? That doesn't really make sense either. So what do you think? Are these jobs a myth? Are there not 12 people in the city who would qualify for some of these open positions? Is that what's going on? Let me know what you think. I appreciate you watching. I will see you in the next video.